There was one time when I made an entire cosplay myself. It took me an entire month to finish it. Hey, there's going to be a convention soon. Great. I wanna be Cloud. Yeah, I'm about to craft him, so it's in 2 weeks. Come again? We cannot possibly...
I want to have a sword.
Alright, I guess I have no choice. Without more talking, let me take you on a journey of creation. To be honest, styling the wig was the scariest part, because just look at his hair. You can't blame me. I did not film the entire wig styling process because I mainly wanted to focus on crafting, but still I can tell you what techniques I used. First, I tried to fluff it up a bit. To do that, I combed all the hair down to the roots. This already looks a bit like his actual hairstyle. Then I brushed it all out again, and as a result, it already had more texture. Then I just... Wait a minute, I didn't know if it would work, and all of a sudden I was finished. I have no clue how that happened, but it happened. To make those spikes, I took a hair strand, brushed it down, then I went over it with a hair straightener in the direction that I wanted the spike to stand. I only brushed out the top part, and the bottom was left a bit fuzzy, and that way it could not fall down. I applied some more hairspray, shaped it a bit, and I kind of managed to do it. Am I dreaming? Only thing I'm not satisfied with is these hair strands in the front, and I will probably glue them onto my face. We don't really have a lot going on back here yet, though I really want to get started with the sword first. I should start easy. This is his shoulder pad, and I'm guessing it's probably the easiest part in the whole cosplay. The easiest part! Let me use some 5mm EVA foam. God, I need stabilizing. This is how the shoulder pad is supposed to look. Let me get started with cutting out 2 of these. The size is great for my shoulder, but of course it doesn't consist out of 2 parts. So I have to fuse this together, and I'm gonna start here, kind of gluing it all the way down here. I don't have contact cement, which is usually used for gluing EVA foam. No idea if it's gonna work. Let me just try my best. Failure is normal and okay. My tea is empty. Talking about experimenting, I have bought a new device. This is a Dremel. Dremel? I think it's pronounced Dremel. In German it's Dremel. Doesn't really matter. I'm gonna use it to sand the edges, because I don't want them to look like this. This is fine. This is fine. Ooh. I should try to test it out first. I can do this. I eventually figured out how to run it across the surface without bumping or pressing too hard, and after sanding it down a bit, I exchanged the sanding paper on top with a polishing tool. And that's where it gets really satisfying, because after running it across the edge, it just got really smooth and shiny. I think I did a pretty decent job, and now I'm going to try to put this together with hot glue. I know it's not the best option, but at least it's non-toxic. It looks like a heart with a lot of imagination. Okay, this is pretty stable. Oh god. Oh no. Oh my god. It's hard to keep this together without burning myself. I'm sweating. This is harder than expected. This bump in the middle here did not look good at all. It doesn't look like it on the video, but I really struggled to flatten it out. In addition to that, the battery of my hot glue gun was empty the entire time. God, that was stressful. I'm guessing it's probably the easiest part in the whole cosplay. After some thinking, I filled in some extra foam in between. It looks rough, but it does the job. I also added a second layer on top, because that's just how the plate looks. And when that was done, I could finally take care of the aesthetics. I added some slashes, then to cover up some holes and the mess that I created, I used some foam clay, and to really blend it into the material, I smoothened it out with water. Now, of course, there's still something missing, which is hexagons and circles. Those are gonna be the screws on here. I got a few screws. loose. Yeah, for some reason he has 3 screws sticking out of his armor. I glued my shapes together, covered them in foam clay. Then I tried to texturize it to make it look like screws, but that did not work. Instead, I wrapped some thread around them and it does kind of look like screws. When that was done, I could finally heat seal the entire thing to make the surface more shiny and easier to paint on. Of course, I did not forget to add these tiny details here. For that, I used 2mm EVA foam as well as just hot glue, and I glued the screws on there. There was a video where I had a few of you screaming in my DMs, telling me to protect myself for a good reason, so I made an investment. Since I'm in this office, I don't have a garden anymore, which means I have to spray in here, so... I have this. This is so impractical if you're wearing glasses, but it's manageable. Yeah. Let me prime this first. The bottom is also going to be partially visible. I'm standing in front of the open window and the air is definitely containing chemicals. Alright, let me apply the first layer of paint. I'm gonna add black acrylic color mixed with a lot of water. No, wait, the water is not gonna stick. Okay, forget the water. I really want to try to make it look metallic and used, so after painting it, I just wipe the paint off. Now it kind of just looks like before, but the more you do this, the more paint will stick to it. There's only a small difference, but paint, no paint. I need to wrap myself. Here I have a lot of plastic wrap, and I'm just gonna wrap my arm. This feels weird. So, I'm doing this for my arm cuffs. They're supposed to start here and end up here. Okay, now I have to take it off. Careful. This is my arm. That was a little loud. This, my dear friends, is fake leather, which smells interesting. A part of Cloud's outfit is made out of leather, so what I want to try out first is the bands on his hands. There's an issue that I'm facing, which I don't have a solution for yet, which is functionality. This fits on here perfectly, but how am I going to take this off? And how am I going to fit into this? The material is not stretchy at all, which means I will kind of have to incorporate something stretchy. And the best thing I could think of is flexible band. Surprise! My arm did not fit through. I removed the top one and it was fine. Maybe not the best solution, but the top part is gonna be covered by gloves anyway, so it's fine. Well, not as functional as I hoped, but they do look good. What I want to work on now is the belt. I have to wrap another part of my body, which is going to be more tricky because it's my waist. I don't want the belt to be too tight, so I'm just gonna wrap it around my pants. What am I doing? Am I doing this right? I kind of look like I'm wearing a trash bag. It's almost perfect. This is the belt with excess fabric. Now here I have a lot more of excess fabric because my idea is to kind of create a tunnel that's going to be open here, and through this tunnel I'm gonna put elastic bands. The leather of the actual belt looks pretty dense. My leather is basically just fabric that folds when it bends. So to stabilize it, I used 2mm EVA foam. I glued it on there with fabric glue, which I would later find out that doesn't stick to foam, but it's still stable because hot glue does stick to foam, as well as the inside of my fake leather. I left it a bit more blank, but of course I wanted to add the pattern in the front and I wanted it to look 3D. So I just did the same thing again. I wrapped 2mm EVA foam in leather, cut out a pattern of leather and glued it on the surface with fabric glue. Luckily, the fabric glue does stick to both the surface as well as the bottom of my fake leather. When I glued it all together, I realized that hot glue does not stick to the surface of my leather. I tried to sand the texture to roughen the surface up a bit, which in the end I figured out was not actually necessary. By using fabric glue, it held perfectly. It only takes quite a long time to dry, so I placed some weight on top and stood on it eventually. And just like this, the belt is ready to wear. And I also found the perfect pants. I'm just gonna have to tie them down here and you kind of get that baggy look. Now, if you know how the uniform looks, you know that the suspenders end here because they're connected to this belt. And as you can see, I have normal ones. The reason for that is because I need to hang a sword back here, and I'm afraid if I put all the weight on this belt, it will be pulled up. My plan is to wrap the suspenders in my fake leather and make it look like they end here. I expected to face a lot more issues, but I just wrapped the suspenders in leather using fabric glue, covered up some areas by adding some leather strips, and most importantly, I left a spare piece at the bottom. I glued these together, cut the edges, and glued them on top of the suspenders. Only the buttons on top were missing, so I just used hot glue. I kind of use hot glue for everything. But it's so easy, you know, it's so easy. And since hot glue doesn't stick to the surface of the leather, I used it to my advantage because I could easily peel it off. Then I just sprayed it, glued it onto the suspenders, and done! It looks great. To actually connect these open ends to the belt, I had to create these slings that you can see here. That was pretty simple. I just took leather pieces, glued them together in the middle, cut open the spare ends, slide them through the other sling, and glue them to the belt. And ta-da! They're connected! On the left shoulder, there's this huge shoulder pad which goes all the way to the back. I had to watch out to not make the shoulder pad too thick, so I used 2mm EVA foam and cut out the same shape out of leather, so we have foam underneath for comfort and leather on top for aesthetics. Of course, this still looks too plain, so I simply added a leather strip on top. Then I just used the same techniques as for the buttons, and you have perfect details. Another issue, the double belt below this belt. I don't know why soldiers need this many belts. Apparently the pants are so heavy that you need 3 of them to keep them up. How do you keep your pants up when fighting? Belt. I'm just gonna make 2 fake belts that are closed in the front and work with the same mechanism as this back here. I don't know if that's the best solution, but that's the best one I can think of right now. I just have to try it out. I used 2mm EVA foam again. Each belt consists out of 2 pieces. I wrapped all my foam pieces in leather again, so I ended up with 4 pieces. And that's where this scary tool comes in handy. Yes, this is a belt hole piercer. I just made the name up, but it's really used for making belt holes. Look at them, they look like real belts. To connect them, I added elastic band, just like I did for the big one, but still there's something missing, which is belt buckles. I'm gonna be honest, that's probably the worst looking part. I made a tiny incision in the middle, slid some wire through from each side, then I kind of twirled the middle together, put some foam underneath and on top, cut it out, sprayed it, and oh my god. The best thing I could do to save it was to contour it with black paint. Look at the difference. It looks better, but only a bit. It's fine. I had to get this done, okay? Moving on. The metal pieces on his wrists. For those, I need some tiny circles and a foam strip. I just glued the circles on top of there to make them look like screws and removed the excess hot glue because that's a lot of hot glue. I applied some heat to shape it so it would curl inwards. And then I had to think of how to put them on. If I make them wrist fitting, my hands would not fit through. So I made incisions and added magnets. The band for the right wrist was just a test piece, and then I went on to make the left one out of 2 pieces. I basically used the same technique, just with more foam strips, each of them being 5mm thick. I glued them on top of each other, added magnets, and I have to tell you, I removed almost all of the magnets later on because it would not fit on my gloves and it was just a mess. But now, onto the aesthetics. I kind of wanted to create a little fade from silver to black, which kind of worked. Of course, I sprayed the edges on top because they're pretty thick. I used the same painting technique as for my shoulder pad, which was just adding black acrylic paint on top. And last but not least, I had to take care of the bandage up here. So I simply cut off the fabric from the sleeve of an old shirt, cut it apart, painted it with beige acrylic paint as well as brown one. Then I just simply glued it into the arm gear, and that's the finished result. Alright, I'm just gonna stand back here for my body to be fully visible. The outfit is finished and I'm gonna try to put it on. Alright, we're gonna start with tying the pants, which means I'm gonna use these bands to fluff them at the bottom. You know, it's cheap, but effective. I also found the perfect top. I'm gonna link it in the description. For the pants, unfortunately, I have no idea where I have them from because I bought them years ago. Let's start. First of all, the belt. I'm just gonna put it on like this. It's comfortable. It's working. It's still loose though, because I haven't attached these. Alright, now the belts. They're flexible. I was thinking of gluing them together, but it works just fine. Okay, arm cuffs. And finally, these elements. If you feel like there's still something missing, you are correct. The gloves. I ordered some and they were way too tiny, like cutting off my circulation tiny. I'm waiting for new ones to arrive. I don't have a mirror here, but I think it looks good. The only thing I'm lacking is muscles, but whatever. Cosplay is not about body size. Now, what could be missing? A big ass sword. The convention I'm planning to go to has weapon rules, just like every convention, but the weapons are not allowed to be over 150 centimeters. I am roughly 160 centimeters, so the maximum size of the sword is gonna be this. I've seen people make swords taller than them, but I have to attach it to my back somehow without it scraping the floor. And I want to attach it with magnets. No idea if it's gonna work, but if it works, the attachment point is gonna be here, right here. I bought this broomstick and it's 130 centimeters long, which means I have 20 centimeters of free space, but I think it's still gonna be stable. So let me try to craft this monster of a sword. Well, I did try to build a big sword once. It was a mess. I tried to make it out of cardboard, which was a mistake to begin with. Not saying that you cannot create swords out of cardboard, but the technique I used was just a mistake. A big mistake. I first had no idea how to approach this, and eventually I came across a video from a Japanese YouTuber building the Buster Sword. Amazing video. I'm gonna link it in the description because that's the closest to what I could realistically replicate. My approach is mainly inspired by his work, but let's just say it's the Walmart version. This time I was smarter than before, so I built it out of cardboard. I'm kidding. I made a test sample out of cardboard. As you can see here, it is almost as tall as me. This is not even for reference, I was just tired. But once I had the sample, it was time to cut open my big roll of 5mm EVA foam, which was kind of hard to flatten out. First of all, I cut out the blade twice, followed by using 10mm thick EVA foam to cut out a few strips, as well as some tiny, I'm just gonna call them bridges. Then I continued to use the strips to build a frame. I also glued the bridges in a straight line, and I did that because their job is to stabilize the broomstick. To fix it in place, I added the other bridges on top and glued them together with tiny 2mm foam strips. Now, Cloud has magnets attached to the back of his suspenders. Now, the whole time I was thinking that realistically this is not going to work, but eventually I gave it a try. I had to densen up the area of the connective point first. I wanted to use magnets in 3 places for it to have a proper grip, as well as to tilt it a bit. I used this cardboard to measure out the distance between the magnets. I carved some shapes into 5mm foam and glued it on the density point so I could easily place place the magnets in there without them getting attracted to each other or the broomstick, because I later found out that the broomstick is magnetic. Once all that was done, I was able to close the whole thing with the second sheet. Then of course I didn't remember where I put the magnets because of course I need a point to connect it to. I used 5mm foam again, placed the magnets on top where they attracted each other. As you can see here, they're pretty strong. I cut out a circle and another circle, glued the magnets in. Then I cut out another circle, put it to the other side of the suspenders, glued both of these elements on top of each other, and there we have it, the first test. It sticks to my back perfectly. I can take it off just like Cloud does it in the game. And yeah, it does look pretty thin, doesn't it? I know, the edge of the blade is pretty sharp. So to actually make the edge, you first need a bunch of triangles, 10mm thick. I placed all of them along the edges, and to cover them up, I used 5mm thick sheets, kind of flattened the edges with my box cutter. When that was done, I just simply glued it on there, closing the tip by pinching it together. The edges just looked like a nightmare, so the best solution was to fill them up with foam clay, which ended up saving it from becoming a disaster. Of course, I was not going to leave it blank. I did not forget the fine details, as well as the materia slots. Again, for fine details, I used 2mm thick foam, put the pattern on top, and cut it out, but I'm gonna spare you the process because it looks infuriating. Once that was done, I simply glued it on there. As you can see, I already have the top part finished, which I thought I did film, but I didn't. Well, I just simply created a box-like shape out of foam. So again, if you're looking for tutorials, go visit this guy in the description. For the bumps on top, I used hot glue again, and then it was time to sand all the edges, which took quite some time. I texturized it by using my box cutter as well as the Dremel. I heat sealed almost the entire sword. There's a tiny section which is not sealed because my battery ran out. That part is not as shiny as the rest, but I covered it up pretty well by painting it. So of course I first had to prime it. My approach was to spray it black first, but halfway through the first side my black paint was just empty. I was not happy, and then I just thought like whatever and sprayed the whole thing silver. Again, I added black acrylic paint on top, which makes it look rough and worn down, and I just love the texture. To cover up the end of the handle, I just wrapped it in foam. And then the handle itself was wrapped in leather, which I did glue with both hot glue and fabric glue. My god, I'm so happy that I bought the sheet of leather. Well, I did struggle with the materia. I did not find anything close to how the materia look, and I also did not have enough time to order anything off Amazon. So I just used reflective holographic paper. And if you glue the correct side, the reflective layer just peels off. It does not have the 3D effect that I wanted to achieve. I will definitely take care of that someday, but at least the slots are now colorful, and it does definitely look better than empty slots. Here's the final test run. And yeah, the sword is not as long as in the game, but if it was longer, moving around would be pretty difficult. But honestly, I'm happy with it. And believe it or not, all of this took me 2 weeks. 8 days to be exact. I'm incredibly happy and proud, and that is why you're going to get an amazing showcase. Here you go. I managed to finish it in the evening before the convention. I was happy, I got many compliments. My sister went as Arif, and it was just a great experience overall. So I hope you enjoyed watching the creation process. And what else can I say? See you again in my next video. Have a nice day, evening or night. And bye!